Welcome to the Digital Forester podcast, where we talk to foresters about how they are using digital technologies in their day-to-day forestry work. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Forester podcast. Today, I'm joined by Clint Graumann. He's the CEO of NUVIEW. Clint, how are you doing today?
Good, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I know I always say this at every start of a podcast, and I'm excited to speak to the person. But in this case, I have to admit, I am really intrigued, curious, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot of things because we're actually going to be talking about Lidar from space and a commercial offering. And so before we get into it, maybe introduce yourself and your background. I know we have some mutual acquaintances. I know when I was traveling, maybe a year and a half ago, someone mentioned to me, hey, there's this company out there that's looking at LiDAR from space. And of course, many listeners are probably laughing, going like, oh, you can't do LiDAR from space. Otherwise, the footprint's so big, it's meaningless, etc. And I'm sure we will educate the listeners as well as myself. But I heard about this and I was like, interesting, something in stealth mode. But before we get into that, I know you were working with Blackbridge back in the day. And again, this is not going that far back. You've worked with Agrian, you've worked Terrametric before you got to NUVIEW, but maybe share your journey and how you got to where you are today.
So again, thanks for having me on the podcast. And our journey actually begins even just a little bit further back than that. The real, I think, beginning of how everything led to NUVIEW began with a company called Rapid Eye, which was a predecessor to Blackbridge. So Blackbridge was based out of Lethbridge, Alberta, and purchased us. We at Rapid Eye were the first commercial small sat constellation, electro-optical, 5 bands, image anywhere on Earth, any day kind of approach. And that really led my views on what valuable data sets exist out in the world. And from my perspective, one of the most valuable data sets is one that's consistent at a global scale and provides a foundation on which all other geospatial data can be built as foundational geospatial intelligence. We went through that path of really setting a strong foundation in wide area coverage. And then, as you mentioned, we were purchased by Blackbridge, and then we were purchased by Planet Labs. I took a little bit of a left turn and worked in agricultural software, but it's not as much of a left turn as what you think, because it was geospatial in nature. It incorporated a lot of satellite imagery, and it was really taking the geospatial data to the grassroots effort, no pun intended, to the ground and to the end user. And I think that was just a huge shaper of my views on how valuable data can be in the user's hands. And then Terrametric was an outgrowth of all of that experience, knowing that we could bring something to the table that would help Earth observation companies in the startup arena really set a strong foundation for their business. And so we did a lot of consulting work on synthetic aperture radar, on optical, thermal, hyperspectral, the whole gamut. And one thing I continuously heard across every market and every set of end users is, if we could get some LiDAR data to go with our, and insert your phenomenology here, like, everything would be better. And after years of hearing that, like, we finally put together the pieces that this is something that the world wants and needs. And so out of that, NUVIEW was born.
Amazing. And I think schooling was at Oklahoma State University. And so was that connected? Like you study like Earth observation or satellites, or was there an interesting life journey or a pivot earlier on that got you on this amazing career by the looks of it?
Yeah, I had some great coursework in geography and geology and all of the sciences that go around that. But it really was pivotal in the business acumen that I think I have, and the grit and determination that you have as an entrepreneur. Like, that's the one intangible I know from all Oklahomans, and they're actually kind of like Albertans in that they're just like really just hardcore, hard work ethic, get it done no matter what attitude. But my real schooling in Earth observation came when I joined Rapid Eye 15 years ago, and it was really straight into the crucible and trial by fire. And I think from that, it's really shaped everything in how I approach the business.
Amazing, amazing. And so as we look forward, you have a new team now at NUVIEW. Were these, and I've looked at the website, there's a lot of, we'll see, I don't know if high powered is the right word, but a lot of notable folks that are working at NUVIEW. Were these people that you knew beforehand, was this a bit of that relationship building over the years, 15 years journey that you just kind of met these people and it made sense to come together?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. For 15 years, having worked in all these different phenomenologies, we have, as you mentioned, incredibly high-powered people on the team that have worked in very influential positions, from stakeholders in government who were in charge of procuring this type of geospatial data for U.S. government, scientists who worked for the U.S. government in the Air Force Research Lab that were basically the chief of the Air Force Research Lab that was in charge of building and designing these instruments for the U.S. Air Force. And then, in addition, all of the experts and capabilities along the way, especially early days, I've been able to draw from 15 years of doing it in the trenches, basically, and making it happen. And then, but once we started NUVIEW and once we came out of stealth mode, the number of people that want to work for a company that's the first to do something, like the first of anything, is just truly compelling. And what I've found is that the engineering team that we've put together is just really an A team of people that want to tackle the world's biggest problem in Earth observation, and be the first to do it.
Amazing, amazing. And if my research is correct, NUVIEW venture backed, you guys did a raise recently, and obviously have great growth trajectory. I think there's a lot of opportunities, as you mentioned, stakeholders or even prospective clients that have already signed on board as excitement. But I suspect our listeners or the audience are probably, some are techie, even though it's the digital forester.
Right.
Some of them use airborne LiDAR or linear mode LiDAR, and many of them have followed the ISATs and the JEDIs, the government or the public funded satellite ones, and they're probably maybe thinking this is not physically possible to do maybe high precision mapping, if that's the right term. But can you introduce us to the nature of this new LiDAR product that you're trying to bring to the market as a commercial offering?
Sure. Yeah. So again, wide area coverage is the basis of everything that we do. But we've got some pretty compelling IP that's we've developed internally on the ability to do some high intensity imaging. So I won't go into the exact hows of it, but I think I can explain it enough on the air that people will get it. So you've basically got an equation that involves four different variables that I think are pretty meaningful. One, do you have a powerful enough laser to take care of the atmospheric attenuation? And the answer on that one is yes. I think we'll be one of the most powerful lasers that's ever been put in space, but yet we're at an altitude where it's still safe, even eye safe, to be able to run it from space. The second part of that is the size of your aperture and how much light you can collect. And that's a problem that is also, it's an engineering problem. It's not a physics problem. And so we've had some great backing to be able to accomplish that specific piece, to do that. The other part of the equation is power. How much power can we supply to the bus? Because a hot laser requires a lot of power. And I would say 5 years ago, there weren't many small or commercial small sat bus manufacturers that could hit that type of power. But over the last few years, we've seen it become commercially feasible. And so it wasn't, again, an engineering question or a physics problem. It was commercial feasibility. Could we build a small sat powerful enough to power that? And then there's altitude on top of that. Can we get to the right altitude that's nominal for being able to tackle laser power, the power that the bus is able to create, and then sustain from that altitude the right level of observation. And then there's a fourth part of the equation, which is highly, I guess, appropriated to our internal capabilities, in that we do something that's akin to a staring spotlight mode in a synthetic aperture radar satellite. In that, when we try to increase the intensity our satellite will have a more than one way to be able to stare at an object for long periods of time. So if you think about foundation